Okay.
Do you have a good side?
No. I don't.
Liz, does Laz have a good side?
His heart.
I can't believe you said
All the way around, he's a good guy.
Oh, yeah.
Good side. Love it.
Hey guys, welcome to Talking Strongman. As you can see, I'm joined by one of the greatest of all time, 3-time world's strongest man, 2-time powerlifting world champion, many-time record holder, the incredible, the one and only Bill Kazmaier. Bill, it's a pleasure to be sat here with you. First time I've done an in-person Talking Strongman, so...
Yeah, pretty different than the telephone, huh?
Yeah, this is more relaxing for
I
you.
can kind of reach right over there.
If I do anything I shouldn't, he's in reaching range of a punch, so we'll behave. But thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure for me because you are literally one of the greatest of all time, someone that I've looked up to from the very start of my career. And I regard you, actually you and Zydrunas Savickas, to me, are the two greatest of all time. So I've managed to interview him.
You can say it. Go ahead, because I'm here. Of course, I'm your favorite, right?
Well, of course.
As we know, Zydrunas, by far the greatest because of the numbers and the years. And I think he's going to come back and get that log press record.
He's hungry for it.
Oh, yeah. But he and I have an argument often as to who's the strongest ever and who's the greatest. And it reminds me of 2 8-year-old boys in the garden having a spat. And one says, "You're the best in the world because you log pressed 500 pounds and you won the Arnold 7-8 times and 4 times world's strongest man," and on and on. And he goes, "Wait, Bill, you were 3 times in a row and powerlifting champion. Nobody's ever done that." Blah, blah, blah. And we go back and forth with such great respect that, yeah, my era, fine. His era, fine. Compare the two on our best day. Gosh, it would have been a fun competition. I'll tell you that. Because really, in my day, I didn't have any competition. If Jeff Capes was going to be somebody who was my rival, that's kind of hard when I beat him by 27.5 points.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think it's a fun conversation about, comparing people of different generations. It's a very difficult thing to do because as an athlete, you raise your level to that generation. So I genuinely think you, out of a lot of the guys from the past, probably would have coped well with how heavy things are these days. You would have probably enjoyed that more than the events you did back then.
Yeah, but I think like a farmer's walk, we were running with 100 kilos, 80 kilos, 200 kilos. I don't think I would have been able to hold on to it unless the handles were just right or the rest. So if I was, I've been asked the question, pick 5 athletes, 4 or 5 that at their prime, who would you want to compete against? And I named them: Alexeyev, Gerner, Saxon, Sandow, Sear. I want to go back 75 years instead of come forward to this era, because how some of those guys did the things they did. The 2-hand anyhow, to take a weight to the shoulder, press it up overhead, and hold it there, and bend back down and grab another weight and hook it on their thumb. Sear with a 1,800-pound deadlift with no straps, only partial, but I think it was probably a hip and thigh lift. They did some really amazing things, and I would have loved to have had a chance with them, only because there was no practice. I mean, those guys practiced. I would have to just walk in cold, which is kind of what I like to do.
I guess that's the fun thing with Strongman. The evolution of Strongman was just trying a lot of these traditional lifts from different areas. Because I've been up to Scotland, and I like going up and trying some of the stones up there. But you get guys that just specialise in those. Mm-hmm. But as a strongman, you've got to be able to adapt.
Wait a minute. Trying some of the stones up there. You broke the world record with the Denny stones.
Yeah, I know, but that's still more similar to me because I was good at moving with weights. But you go to some of these places and they've just got these weird rocks that they lift. But you as particularly back then, it's different nowadays. The guys are told the events and they get time to train them for months. You didn't know the events half the time, did you?
No, they really showed them to us either the day before or the day of, and we virtually couldn't touch them until right before the event.
See, I love watching the old World's Strongest Man with you pressing the logs. And people always I mean, you had the log record, I think it was 180 kilos, 400 pounds. I'd love to see what you could have done training on one of these beautiful Slater logs, or the metal logs that are fabricated.
I didn't see them but every year and didn't bother to try to build one. And we didn't know what the events were going to be, so how do you practice? You go to the gym and get as strong as you can in the big three in powerlifting, and then go overhead a bit. One of the things that was kind of interesting in training for pulling, I beat some of the biggest guys in the world, 100 pounds heavier than me, in truck pull. But the way I trained was a box a bit like this, maybe half a meter, 20, we called it inches, 22, 3 inches, in front of a power rack with a rack over my shoulders, slightly holding on to the power rack and doing one-legged step-ups. I worked up to a weight, believe it or not, 350 pounds on the rack, on one leg, for sets of 15. You'd have a hard time doing one. World's strongest hips.
Sounds brutal.
I think you would have enjoyed it. I gave that rack to a kid called Paul Swift. He is involved with Peloton and racing on bikes. He was a national champion or one of the top 2 or 3 by using that rack and doing that type of training. It's literally just like a piston.
Yeah, carry over well to the power needed for cyclists.
Yeah, so pretty tough to prepare. Even my first World's Strongest Man in '79, they'd had the show for 2 years before. I didn't look at a TV show from those 2 years. I didn't know what the events would be. I just showed up. And I enjoyed that competition because I was against Don Reinhardt. And as we were moving along, I was beating him. And then we got to the deadlift. And the weight was 900 pounds, and it was really hard. And it was equally hard for him. They jumped to 960. We don't know how accurate the weight was. It's one of the hardest things I ever did. And as I locked it out, you could see in the film later, Don put his hand up and said, if he wants it that bad, he can have it. And we went to squat. But I totally ruined myself in that deadlift. So then I didn't know the tricks of squatting in that rack. And I went downhill from there and took 3rd place. But I probably could have won that first year if I just would have been a little more serious.
Do you think that first year, though, it gave you that experience and hunger to come back, wanting to win the next year?
Oh, yeah. And then in 80, it was really, Don got hurt, so I ran away with it. The following year in 81, there literally was no competition. I won, beating Lars Hedlund by 26.5 points. And then in 82, in 81, I tore off the pectoral. Right after I did that, well, in the steel barbell, what do? Hey, you go try to play pro football. And then you jam your thumb, twist your knee, and that doesn't work out. So you're back doing strongman that same year, just a couple months later. So it was one of these for me.
I guess it's weird going back to those years, because now you can be a pro strongman. You can kind of you watch it on TV and you're like, I want to do strongman. And you see it all the time, kids that come into the gym and they're like, I want to be a strongman. But for you, strongman was very new back then, wasn't it? So you were this big, strong guy. Powerlifting, I'm guessing, was your main focus. But you're looking at ways to further your sporting career. You did loads of things.
I tried. Yeah, I tried to play pro football. That really didn't work out. When you go in with a pectoral torn off, on the 3rd day of the practice, your bicep comes off. First day of practice, you pull a hamstring doing a shuttle run, and you keep running through it. That's pretty tough stuff. And after jamming a thumb and trying to hold on to somebody without a grip and without a pec, it's like, this isn't working out. One of the most unfortunate things is that I wasn't hungry. I had a gym that was doing extremely well. I had just gotten paid from World's Strongest Man, so there was $50K in the bank. I drove a new Porsche. I was all beat up and said, I don't need pro football. I'll go do something else.
Well, I want you to take me back to the beginning. What got you into to the gym? What got you fascinated with lifting?
You have to go back to when I was 10 years old. We had a gym teacher, history teacher, but in the gym, in the locker room, after school, no one allowed. I heard some sort of clanging. I was 10 years old. We had just had a track meet, and there was 2 of the boys had failed twice, held back, so they were a couple years older than me. One of them beat me in the 50-yard sprint. I won the 100-yard sprint because I had a second, third gear, and I won the 440. So I was pretty eager to look at sport and try to find something to do because school really wasn't interesting me. And I snuck in the gym and knocked on the door of the locker room. Mr. Noss said, "Come in, Bill, but you have to be quiet." Now, I'm kind of a kid with ADD and a little bit tough, broken home, and a lot of mental problems. I came in and I sat down and I watched him lift his weights. And here's a guy now that on a slow pitch softball, he could knock the ball out of the park every time at bat. He was always getting home runs. He looked like a shredded frog. The sound when the ball came off the bat was as if he was launching this ball and it was shredding the fabric of the universe. I stood in the outfield and the ball went, it was whack! And I thought, gosh, I maybe could learn from this fellow and he'd be a mentor. And I watched him lift his weights. He took 150 pounds from the floor to his shoulders and pressed it over his head. He then shared with me that he was going to do that until he could get to his body weight, and he wanted to press his own body weight. He weighed about 195. Then after 150, he went 175 pounds, 185, and when he went 190, he missed. And he was a bit frustrated, and he started to put his weights away. As he tucked a few of them under the locker, I said, "Could I try my weight?" And he said, "Okay." Now he was mad, and I knew growing up what a mad man was like, and his disposition really had changed, and I could see that he didn't want me there. He left my weight on the bar, which was 110 or 50 kilos. I took the bar from the floor without any instruction, never seeing a barbell before. I took it to the shoulders, pressed it overhead like it was a pillow. I could have done it 5 times.
Yeah.
I set it back down and I waited for his reaction. I thought maybe, a smile, a pat on the back, way to go, Bill. No, I waited a little more. And finally the words came out of his mouth. The inspiration for me for the rest of my life to try to become good at something and share it with others and help people around me. As a matter of fact, when I'm in front of 500 kids or 1,000 and speaking 10 times in one day, the records are 15 in 30 hours, 18 times in 32 hours, 27 times in 3 days. Those words just ring so loudly. Such a motivator. A bit like my dad, who said, "You're horseshit today, you'll be horseshit tomorrow, and when you die and throughout your life, you're going to be horseshit." Mr. Noss said to me, "Bill, now you have to leave and don't come back." Which, there's my first experience with weight training and weightlifting. I thought maybe he'd invite me back the next day and show me, break down the lift.
How old were you at this time?
10 years
10
old.
years old.
What's the power clean? What's good for deltoid? Upright rows, front raises. What about triceps?
Now, if you saw a kid coming into the gym now and you see them do something like that, you'd want to nurture them and help them.
I meet kids and give them protein and advice and, help them with positions on the apparatus. I generally explain it to kids that the gym tools, like this checkerboard, it's a game. Mm-hmm. The tools in the gym are things as if you were a woodworker and you had a saw and a planer, sandpaper, files, drills, and you built cabinets. It's just the same thing. Different tools, different objectives. And yeah, that was the beginning at 10. So you can imagine I was strong, I was fast, and I was the biggest kid in the class.
Yeah.
So as I grew up, I gravitated towards American football, track and field, and then wrestling. And in wrestling, I kind of made a mistake because as the biggest kid in the field in football, as a first-year freshman, they saw me in one of the games take the ball out of a guy's hands and run 75 meters the other way. And my sophomore coach, second year, said, "Bill, line up back here behind the quarterback, and let me explain the line to you. You've got holes 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7. And you're the 3-back. We have a powerhouse backfield. You're the fullback. You're going to block all the time. And we'll give you the ball once in a while." Well, we went 10-0, and they gave me the ball more than once in a while. As a junior and senior, I was all-state, best in the state at that position. Against our rivals, I carried the ball. In one game out of 13 plays, I carried the ball 12 times. And it was just here comes Bill, see if you can stop him. And I would drag these kids down the field. At 222 pounds, as a running back, our biggest lineman was 190 pounds. So, biggest, fastest, strongest. Football was really my focus, and I wish I would have just tried to gain more weight and gone to college at 250. Instead, I cut my body weight to 185 for wrestling, 37 pounds. And I don't even want to tell you and share with your listeners how I got there. But I used X-Lax. So everything went out. I used water pills. I was in the sauna, in the jacuzzi, running in a rubber suit. Any food that went into my stomach usually came back out. And I was a professional athlete at 17 and 18. But just imagine in that time period and growing up, there would be maybe a loaf of bread in the cabinet with some powdered sugar and some peanut butter. So I had peanut butter frosting. My breakfast was a slice of toast or two with butter, sugar, and cinnamon. And that took me into school. In the evening, there was a nickel on the counter at the house where I could go and get a candy bar. Milky Way, Payday, Three Musketeers was my dinner. There wasn't anything in the refrigerator, so imagine growing up having a sound, solid nutritional program with some of that talent and not cutting that weight in wrestling. I might have been a totally different athlete. And I probably would have played the game of professional football and never really seen weightlifting. So,
well, it's interesting how things work out, obviously. I mean, you obviously went into powerlifting. When did that start?
Okay, so as I dropped out of college from the football program, they wanted me to play in the line, and I loved carrying the ball and having the glory. So I stopped out and virtually quit school. I worked in 2 different bars. One, everybody drank. I was the bouncer, and the other, and bartender. The other was a shoe show. And all the ladies did was run around with their shoes on and nothing else. I was kind of, how do I put it, living above a pub, spending a lot of time in the gutter. And somebody encouraged me to come to the YMCA. And I did, and they had a wedge in the back door, and I snuck in. For a couple of days, and then all of a sudden the wedge was gone. And while I was there in just a few days, they taught me 5 things. How to squat, bench, deadlift, add them together for a total. And that all worked out pretty good for me. Within just a few weeks, I remember squatting 400 for 10 reps. So I had a lot of explosive power. My bench went from 300 to 400 virtually overnight. And I started hanging around guys that were really encouraging. At 400, I told a couple of the guys I was going to bench press 500 pounds. And they said, "You're daft, man. You won't bench 500 as long as you got a hole in your ass." And I said, "Oh yeah? Well, I'll tell you this. Right after I do 500, I'm going to bench 600. I didn't hang around the guys that weren't positive. And powerlifting went pretty well for me. Overnight, I won the state championships, and then national championships, world championships, and world records. And then there was the lure of the strongest man. But as a dominant powerlifter, those competitions included shot putters, discus throwers, professional wrestler, professional footballers, whoever they could find that would be a good representative of the title of world's strongest man. Against a world-class powerlifter, an Olympic lifter doesn't have a chance. Their lifting is way too specialized. And they brought a guy named Jerry Hanna, who just seemed to tear up his hamstrings. And Bishop Delegavich, a discus thrower, tall, lanky, good thrower, but not powerful in the static lifts. So it really wasn't much of a competition. And I was enjoying it, thinking that, gosh, after 3, I could have had 4, winning the first one. I thought, I'm going to just keep doing this. And then I waited, and I didn't get a letter, I didn't get a phone call, I didn't get an invite, and I was the world champion. I thought, surely they would invite me back. You know, in modern sports, the Michael Jordan of basketball,
Yeah.
Tiger Woods of golf, of course you're going to invite him to the big tournament. Now, can we share what really happened and why I wasn't invited back?
Absolutely.
It's because I was a dickhead. I was an asshole. They called me a son of a bitch because I won so much. Truth, that's tongue-in-cheek. Franco Colombo tried to run with the refrigerator. And some knobs watching it on YouTube say, oh yeah, he twisted his knee. No, he snapped his tibia and fibia, and half of his leg was planted on the ground and his foot was over there. Well, they called it faulty apparatus, and they went to court. And Arnold got on the stage and said, yeah, he lost a lot of work, would have won the Olympia, blah, blah, blah. And he was awarded $2.4 million for his injury. And as I felt that refrigerator, I thought I was carrying a dragon's tail behind me. I couldn't get the weight up and over my shoulders. The guys in the heat before me both fell. In my heat, the guy next to me fell. I thought, this is a pretty tough event. So after he won that settlement, they said, TWI kind of wanted to wash their hands.
Isn't there a video of Franco saying, oh, I'm a chiropractor, it's dislocated, I'm fine, or something like that?
Yeah.
And you can see clearly it's not.
It was snapped, yeah. They did not need an American champion when they took the show over to Europe. So they brought Ernie Hackett and John Gamble and I think maybe Wad, some of the guys that were good powerlifters, but they couldn't compete against John Paul Samerson or Jeff Capes. And so Jeff and John Paul traded the title back and forth for a couple of years. Surely, if I beat Jeff by 27.5 points, with a new guy named John Paul who was thin, athletic, exciting, dynamic, great athlete, his best squat, John Paul, was 780 pounds. Well, in one workout, I did 800 for 10 reps. I did 5s at 805, 5s at 850, a triple at 900. John Paul and Magnus Ver, same lift and squat, same in deadlift, 830. I did sets of 5 at 825 in training. Their best benches, John Paul's was 480 pounds. I did 15 reps at 500. I'm kind of curious, as an athlete, who do you think is stronger? I mean, gosh, if it's strength, it's static. And yeah, I probably would have won a couple more. But yeah, TWI had the choice.
Have they ever given you a reason, like to you, of why they didn't invite you back?
Oh, no. Well, Barry Frank put it kind of blunt in China when '06, when Phil Pfister won. And a friend of mine came over, and we walked up to Barry to say hello, and Barry hardly greeted me, and he said to my friend, "How long has Kaz been so stupid?" His general attitude was, it doesn't matter who you invite, as long as they're big, fat, sort of strong, nobody knows the difference and nobody cares. And that was their idea moving forward in 83, 45, that they really didn't need me. And little did I realize that when Jeff won, he became a national hero here in England, and that Strongman was going to be, and it was so popular, not only then but now. I can remember in those late 80s doing 24 competitions in 12 weeks, and doing in Highland Games and Strongman. and traveling throughout the country and really enjoying myself. I know you do, but I really love it here. I love the people in England. I mean, just your attitude, your demeanor. When you think of the strongmen, Andy Black and Milton, Gavin, all the guys, Bish, Mark Felix, Luke, Luke the powerlifter. You know, the guys are so kind and so sharing and supportive of each other, and just so humble. Back in the day, as we were in the competitions, Johnny Perry was over in Malaysia, and he wasn't doing well. And he said at lunch, and he asked for advice. He said, "Nobody will share with me. They won't tell me how to do anything. I asked for tips, and they told me to fuck off." It's like, hey, Johnny, welcome to my world. When I first came over in those late 80s to compete at World's Strongest and was invited back again, it was 9 Europeans against me.
So, you didn't get an invite for World's Strongest Man, you saw it going on, and then 88 you get an invite. What did you think when you kind of suddenly saw you'd been invited back?
Yeah, that was kind of a strange year, the 83, 4, 5, 6. I wasn't really exposed. They didn't show it much in America. Heck, it barely made it in those early 80s. It got bumped, one of the shows, from a tennis match going over. So it was really a small sport in its infancy. When I was finally invited back, it was to the Highland Games and the Muscle Power Classics and those. I was wrestling at the time, just in wrestling shape, 300 pounds, touch more. Trying to have abs and be ripped and look the part of a wrestler with blonde hair was really kind of a fiasco. And while I was doing it, I pressed a guy over my head. And as you know, in real professional wrestling, the guy's supposed to help.
Yeah.
As you press overhead. Well, this guy didn't. He weighed about 320, 330. I tore my tricep off. And I fell to the mat. I go, "Man, I'm screwed." He goes, "You sure are. You're supposed to win and I'm on top of you." And I said, "Well, throw me out." And so he did. And I came back in the ring, finished the match, wrestled 2 more days. Then I went to my doctor and he said, "Well, Bill, you have detached your tricep. I'll sew it back on." He made the appointment, he did the operation, and I was invited to the Muscle Power Classic 8 weeks to the day of the surgery. I didn't wear my cast. My doc, after 1 week, said, I went to see him, he said, "Bill, where's your cast?" I said, "I took it off, doc. I couldn't move my arm." He said, "That's the general idea." So I had a little TENS unit that I put on it, and I couldn't do much training at all with one arm. From some of those kind of injuries, most people take a year off. I mean, look at Luke Richardson on a bicep. And that's the smart way to do it. I showed up at the Muscle Power Classic and won the first event, which was a 56-pound weight toss over the bar, and then went on through the rest of the events and beat everybody. I was a gimp. I had to train back from that. And it was just, at 12 weeks, I did a 242-pound log more than 30 times. My doc said, "Yeah, Bill, you can use a 10-pound plate." Well, about 100 kilos and more, 110. At 16 weeks, we had the World's Strongest Man, and it was in Budapest. In the log press, I set the world record. I had a singlet on saying Bill, blue singlet. And the look on my face was one that was just, the truth of the matter is, I was petrified after doing that lift, thinking the tricep could have come right off.
Yeah.
And the commentator said, "Oh, and the glare from Bill must be meant for John Paul Sigmarsson." No, I didn't even know he was there. It was the injury. But to try to do those things and come back from those injuries was, as we say, the measure of a man is how you react on a bad day. And I carried so many injuries into so many competitions. When the pectoral came off in the steel bar bend, I had a better case than Franco Colombo to sue the company. They told us, practice with hot rolled steel. The year before that competition, we used hot rolled steel. I was the only one to close a 3/4 inch piece. And I was pretty good in the pectoral and tricep strength. Jeff Capes was a little more flexible than me. We both pulled on that cold rolled steel, which is 3 times harder.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of going over the top and blew out deltoid and pectoral with 4 events left. My doc said, Bill, we better go to hospital. Maybe we can put this back together. I said, Doc, as a modern day gladiator, we leave parts of our body on the field of battle. When I walked in here, that was my title. That is my trophy. And that $20,000 check is mine. I got 4 events left, and I'm not going to the hospital till I'm done. So you might think, how would you do in those events? Squat, deadlift, caber toss, wrestling. Well, couldn't use my arms, so I couldn't wrestle. I went through the first round, it was the last event, and I took 4th. The squat deadlift, I won first in both, and took a second in the caber toss using just one arm.
Wow.
So, my whole career was kind of...
But even to win the squat and deadlift, the pain that you're in when you've torn a muscle, like yes, your legs work and stuff, but the agony of kind of...
Trying to get that arm back and down inside of a rack that's really not that good for squatting. And all week long, they were winding me. They would say in their introduction, and the man with the world's strongest legs, Dave Waddington. Can you tell I can remember that like it was yesterday? And he actually thought he was going to beat me in the squat just because he'd squatted 1,000 pounds in a competition.
Yeah.
This was 970 pounds, and it pinned his ass to the ground. I, with that pectoral injury and an attitude, got into a zone where I was just going to go down and come up. Boop, boop. See it and do it. Run it in your mind. See it a dozen times the night before. 100 times. See it and do it. It's pretty simple. If you look at lifting in that manner. And even with the injury, I did that, and then I said, these are the world's strongest legs. You decide.
That's one of the best clips, I think, from when I was old.
Well, we didn't really want to talk. We didn't want to be bombastic or extroverted or a showman. I was so in the zone, and when the Rocky movie played, when the Rocky movie came out, and then they had the do-bop-bop-bop, they stacked the odds, you take it to the streets.
Yeah.
I went to the movie the night before the competition, and then I got the soundtrack, and that's what I was listening to. So as I'd approach an event, I'm tearing a little bit. I have goosebumps, and my hair's standing on end, and I'm in a zone where it's almost otherworldly. It's, the psych portion of it. My eyes are popping out of my head. Everybody thinks, Billy Graham, that Kazmaier, he's blood doping. He's had a lot of cocaine. It's got to be something. He went back to his room and he came out and he looked fresh as a daisy. What the hell was he doing? Well, IV, saline dextrose, ahead of my time, meditation, relaxation, and just coming back with a new attitude like it's my first event. That was I would want to say an era where it was probably a little bit easier, maybe a lot of static stuff, heavy, but you had 1 or 2 events a day over 5 days, and there weren't 30 athletes, there were 10.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a pool to draw from. So I see it like our Giants Live Strongman shows, putting everything in one day. That's a totally different athlete than giving a guy a week to compete just 1 event, 2 events a day. So we would see bigger numbers nowadays if we didn't pack everything together. I think World's Strongest Man does their best to make it a great show, but it's a group that doesn't really, how do I put it? If they didn't have Colin Bryson, Darren Sadler on their set to sort things out and run it, they would struggle, and they had struggled over the years. They, not knowing with Magnus for Magnuson and some of the greats of that era. They had a lot of running events and pole push and things that were kind of goofy. I can remember one time in was it the Caribbean, they're doing a safe lift overhead with the worst piece of kit you'd ever see. The bar was pivoting, the safes were swinging. Man, somebody could have got hurt. But so yeah, that's a little reflection on some of the past, and it's fun doing this. Give me some more questions and things to talk about.
Then,
because I got a dozen more injuries. Probably not that interesting.
well, injuries are something that obviously, I mean, you're someone that's probably had more injuries than even I've had, and you know, I think, like you said, you mentioned Luke Richardson. He got injured at World's Strongest Man this year, decided to take the whole year off. Even when I was doing it, I didn't think about that. My mindset was, I've got to recover, I've got to be in the next competition. And you were the same. Like back then it was literally, I mean, you're trying to win some prize money, aren't you?
Exactly.
You're trying to pay the bills and stuff like that. The sport has evolved. And I think now it's great that we're seeing these guys that can, you know, there's guys now that can be professional strongmen. But back then, if you weren't winning shows, you weren't getting any money. If you weren't kind of being seen on TV and stuff like that, you wouldn't get any sponsors and stuff. So
yeah.
Did you feel that pressure that you had to come back from injuries as quick as possible?
Oh, without a doubt. Let's look at my case, and as we are, and think about the 3 World's Strongest Man shows of my first 79, 80, 81. After 79, third place was like 10,000. They didn't pay me. The AAU wanted my money. They said I was an amateur and they were going to take it because they surely could use it for better things to line their pockets than to let me have it to eat with. In 1980, I took first place, 20,000. They didn't pay me. The third show in 81, I win again, rather decisively. They don't pay me for 6 months. We're talking 2.5 years. It's the 79 day, 80 day, 81 day is 3 shows. They owe me 50,000. 6 months later, they paid me. That's how I started my gym. And I'm probably fortunate that they played the game that way because I then had a business. And it was fairly successful. And it was great support. If they would have given me the 10,000 for the first show, I would have spent it.
Yeah.
Same with the next. So it was kind of a gift and godsend. I can remember one competition, powerlifting, because that was really the crux of my career. When I corkscrewed in the squat, 2 different guys wrapping my knees, I fell to my face. 6 angels behind me caught the weight. And they carried me off the stage. I hobbled back on for a world record in the bench an hour and a half later. But 2 days later, my legs were blown up, torn adductor, torn abductor, and I went to the doctor. And the surgeons got around me, they looked at the x-rays, they said, well, nothing's broken, but you torn the shit out of your legs. I said, well, is there any reason why I can't squat 900 pounds 12 weeks from now? They looked at each other with this kind of, like you right now, this smirk. Well, you're Bill Kazmaier. Of course, there's no reason why you can't squat 900 pounds 12 weeks from now. That was the World Championships. Well, there I am in the gym that day, holding onto the power rack, doing sets with just body weight, full squats, and trying to get flexibility. And then it got to 50s with no bar overnight. And then the bar, then 135. I went to the World Championships and watched Dave Waddington squat this high and get white lights. I squatted parallel and got red lights at 865 pounds, 12 weeks after a severe injury.
How do you mentally kind of, you must be one of the strongest mentally willed athletes I've ever met, because there's not many people that, I mean, we're not talking one injury here, you know, the amount of shows you've done. And I mean, I know we've spoken about this before where I was, you know, I did a video on you and you kind of got angry because you felt like I'd left out a lot of things, you know, particularly the injury side of things. And I mean, I've done competitions where I think my first World's Strongest Man, I dislocated my toe and I had to go and pull the truck. And I know, I just wanted to prove to people that I belonged there and I was one of the strongest guys. It wasn't, you managed to block out that pain. Now, little bit of pain, I don't want to feel it. But there was a time in my life, pain didn't bother me. I just wanted to prove that I was good enough. What was going through your head when you got these injuries and you still wanted to keep going and you still wanted to prove that you were the greatest strongman on the planet?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tough question. You know, I've seen athletes drop out with severe injuries and go home from a competition because they had a hangnail. And it was devastating. You know, hospital for days. Freaking hangnail. If you wouldn't have pulled that truck, I would have called you a pussy.
Yes, you would have.
In a heartbeat, because you just buck up when you get hurt and you bear down and something special comes from within. For me, it's kind of, if you envision a ship at sea that was from the 1700s, and against the mast is the sail being driven by purity of purpose. Gale winds if you're kind, caring, sharing, thoughtful, forgiving, understanding, respectful, responsible, loving, and selfless instead of selfish. And if that's your purpose, it's something really strong inside of you that's going to drive you. And you create that sense of urgency, which is simply fight or flight, do or die. The reward is you're not a pussy. The reward is...
You hear that, guys? Bill Kazmaier said I'm not a pussy.
Well, I'm not a piece of shit. My dad tried to tell me that every day of my life. Mr. Nas said go away and don't come back.
Are you one of those people then that likes, you know, you take the criticism people give and you want to prove them wrong?
Oh, without a doubt, Luz. You know, positivity is okay. I kind of feel sorry for kids who grow up with a silver spoon, with a refrigerator full of food, with a car at 15, brand new one, a lot of times. You know, there's no motivation there. For us who share similar backgrounds, tell us we can't and you've just lit a fire under us. Give us a trophy, pat us on the back. In America for the last 30 years, if you compete in a sport, you get a trophy. If you show up once in a while, you don't have to win, you don't have to be the best. It's just kind of that's all a joke. Yeah, the motivation comes from within. It's, you know, I told you I snuck into that YMCA and they taught me 5 things. But that one thing that they taught me, which was so important, more than squat, bench, deadlift in total, was how to tap into the supernatural, to a higher power, to spirituality. There was a book that was open as I walked out of the Y, and it was open to the book of Psalms. And my eyes directly went to Psalm 40. It said, I waited patiently, O Lord, for you to hear my cry. You reached down and pulled me out of a miry pit. You put my feet onto a rock. You established my goings. You put a new song unto my heart, and even praise unto the Lord. Many will see and will fear and will trust in the Lord. Well, after reading that, I said, okay, Mr. Big, when you make me the best, I'll be humble, I'll share my talents with others. One day you can speak through me and I'll work for you. 27 schools in 3 days. I think Kaz Protein, feed his children, teach his children. I've tried to help and be that person where history doesn't repeat itself. I'm not like my dad. I'm not like Mr. Nas and teachers that laughed at me in spelling bees when I couldn't do some things cerebrally. I kind of have an excuse. I was delivering newspapers as a child, 13, and I got beat up by all the guys. They would take the wire that held the bundles of paper together and bend them fast and then burn me with it. And they're all 15, 16, 17. My last newspaper had to get to this guy's house before he came home from work.
Yeah.
And so I ride as hard and fast as I could. Well, one day he caught me in his driveway. He tried to run me over with his car, and then he slammed it in reverse and chased me out of the driveway. And I had a choice word like, ha 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 ha, yeah, you see you. And then the old shit moment happened. I hit the highway. The lady across the street who got the second to last newspaper said, his body went 25 feet, 8 meters in the air for 50 meters down the road. The old shit was, I'm chased out onto the highway. with the blind bushes. And the car was going about 60 miles an hour. So there are the black marks, 50 meters. I land on the hood.
Jesus.
I get off the hood and I remember saying, I got to sit down. And then went into shock. Well, I missed 2 days from school. No one really knew where I was. I was bruised, not one broken bone. And I think I might have had brain injury. I was never tested, but I would read a paragraph, and as I got to the second or third sentence, I couldn't remember the first one. So that retention and problems cerebrally throughout my life, sometimes I think it's explained like this. When one door closes, two doors open. So because I had problems with retention, and I practiced something that was more like a meditation, and the spirituality and understanding the body, and maybe some of the comprehension of mental capacity, the psychic senses of clairvoyance and precognition and telepathy and telekinesis. So I really worked hard on those, and telekinesis was one of my favorite, to try to turn a toothpick on water in a state of a om. It's not moving. Om. So one time I actually made a glass slide across the counter. My friend's amazement, they just could not believe it. As I'm standing at the sink and I've got the hot water running on a glass, and then I turn the water off and I say, hey guys, I got the power. I turned the cup over and put it down on a formica, a very flat surface, and it just walked. I went zzz, and it walked across the counter. Little did they realize that it was the steam inside of the cup that made it sort of lift and levitate. But
maybe you could have had a career as a magician.
Yeah, I don't have that sleight of hand.
Illusionist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the most nimble of hands, do we?
No. For me, and I think I've been quoted more than 100 times, that lifting weights was a manifestation of my frustration, of my inability to use levitation. So with all the mental practice on doing things, running that motion picture, I mean, we're talking in the 60s and 70s of becoming strong mentally, because I hated school. The educational program and system was either beneath me or over my head.
Did you feel like lifting weights was like a safe place for you?
Oh, without a doubt, Laz. It was something where, we all gravitate towards something that we're good at. And within such a short period of time, I became state and national champion and world champion, and stopped working in a bar and kind of got my life and act together. And those championships and the success, which breeds success, helped me to overcome some of my disabilities.
Do you have a performance that you look back at and, really fondly? Like, is there one show that kind of means the most to you?
Gosh, I wish I could say that, Laz, and give you a quick, honest answer, but I've been asked that kind of question before. The bench press world record, when I tore the legs, I could not push on my feet. The bar started to kind of get away. There was nothing I could do about it. I just had to ride it out. And a lot of people have commented, why is it drifting, and why doesn't he have control? That was an accomplishment, the 661, 300 kilo. The 2 weeks before I tore the pectoral, I dropped back down to 575 pounds and did it for 5 and said, I'm screwed. I don't know what to do. Next week I was supposed to take 33.55 for a double. And then I'm good for 35 over that, which would have put me at 690 or maybe a 700. But with the pec torn, I go, I don't know, should I even go to the competition? Instead of peaking, I waited a week and did a set of 10 at 500. And it hurt. It was sore. I went to this competition thinking, I don't know if I can make my opener. I took the 300 kilos on my third, tucked my elbow really tight instead of flaring using my normal form, and made a world record. I opened in the squat with 900. I want to say 875. I did a 925 second attempt. I had done 900 for 3 in the gym. The world record was 968. I was going to do a 975. That with a world record and a potential 690. And I did 850 that day to do the 1,100 kilos with a 925 and a 300 kilo. Imagine leaving 50 on the squat platform, leaving a good 30 on the bench, and I did 848 in the deadlift. I tried the world record of 887, and my hand opened up. Well, I always trained with straps, and I didn't realize I had a grip problem. And we watched a piece of tape on the plate. As I went to lock out and pull hard like I do, my hand opened up. So I dropped it and missed 887. That day of 1,100 kilos, 50 and 30 and 50 would put me at 1,160 kilos that day. And I couldn't fit inside the bar. I was so big, we didn't have the Passanella bar.
Yeah.
We had the 45 pound, 20 kilo, and it was narrow. I had to put my hands against the plates in warm-ups, and then one finger, high in the neck. And then I drop it down the back, hands against the plates. Man, did that hurt. It hurt so much that the bicep tendon comes up through a groove, the bicipital groove. It's covered with a sheath. Well, I tore the sheath off, and the tendon came out of the groove. The day after squatting, I was screwed. I'd drive up to Atlanta, 100 miles away, and my chiropractor would grab the tendon and pull it and straighten my arm and pop it back into the groove. And I'd bench the next day. So imagine not squatting or deadlifting and healing up my shoulders. And instead of taking 45 and 50 kilo dumbbells for front and side raises, I might have used 60s, 65s, and really tightened up. And maybe weighing more than 150 kilos, just bumping it up to like 170 kilos, and getting out of a climate like Alabama, where the Strength Research Center and Dr. Terry Todd invited me. It was 100 degrees every day. I'd lose 10 to 15 pounds in a workout, and luckily I could rehydrate with IV. But if I would have been in a cooler climate up north, Canada, Alaska, Newfoundland with Dr. Todd would have been nice. And to have been just 20, 25 kilos more, 800 would have been a cinch in the bench press.
I mean, 800 pounds that's what, Julius Maddox is talking about however many years later. Julius, 400 plus pound man, specializes just on the bench. I'm a strong guy. Like when people talk about 600 pound benches, it impresses the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. 700 pound benches, you were doing all these kind of lifts while doing everything: powerlifting, strongman, Highland Games, wrestling, American football. You didn't specialize, not properly like they do now.
No, and as an athlete yourself, Les, you understand and completely comprehend that a little heavier body weight, better conditions, less injuries, what that would have yielded. On the day I was good for the world record squat of 968, potentially with a wider bar, a little more body weight, 1,050, 1,100 raw or nearly, with the suits we had, and the bench way up, the deadlift, I don't know. As you know, the fatter the hand, the harder it is to hold onto a bar. But yeah, no specialization, and really just, I had one book that I really was fond of as a child. It was called The Story of Jim Thorpe, the Carlisle Native American. My family was from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and he was from Carlisle. At the turn of the century, at the Olympic Games, the king called him the greatest athlete of the century. He won the pentathlon, the decathlon, played professional baseball and professional football. He was my hero. I wanted to be like him. Growing up, I said, I want to be the decathlete of strength. I want to do everything at a high level, which doesn't allow for specialization. So in looking back, if I would have specialized on something for, as I said, bench, even just one cycle, surely 725 more. 1 year, 800 more.
Do you think if you were competing in modern days, where you see these guys, they do a log lifting world championships, there's guys that just specialize on bench press, the deadlift world championships, do you think there's a lift that you would have liked to have really focused on?
Well, sure, bench. It's so easy. I mean, the simplest thing to do. Overhead in the log, if I would have trained with it just a little bit. You know, one day in the gym, I was wrestling, so my weight was down. I said, okay, I'm going to start getting ready for the Louis Cyr dumbbell. First day I did a 220 with a 1 inch. One arm clean. Next week, 240. Next week, 260. I was doing heavy dips. And I have a belt with a chain and 200-pound plates. That's a lot of stress on the tricep. Mm-hmm. And thereby, I didn't realize my tricep was injured. When I pressed the guy over my head in wrestling, the tricep popped off. I could have done the 280 with a little bit of work and back in power training and not wrestling, a 300-pound one-arm press. So yeah, just a touch of specialization, not dedicating my life. You know, when I did the silver dollar deadlift, I had 2 torn hamstrings, as we know. I went 870 and tore 1 and said, shit, what do I do? Keep going, wrap it up, and went 950 and tore the other one. So, oops, now what do? Deadlift is up next. I can't lift the bar bending my legs, so I just do it stiff-legged. 600, 700, 800, 825, 50, 75, 1,000, 1,000, 25,000, 50. Everybody else is watching Kaz, and me and Ernie Hackett are going back and forth. He's a 5'10", I'm 6'2", with a little difference at pull. And then the next event is wrestling. I can't walk. We wake up the next morning, my legs are swollen and purple. Nobody knows it, so I don't tell anybody. I start working with a guy that was a landscaper, and he was my training partner. We started to push and shove, and I was like a baby. I couldn't do a thing. So I got in the ring with John Gamble, and I said, okay, I'm pulling a joker card. Here it is. Whack! I'm ready. He was so scared, he didn't know what to do. I just bulldozed him, he ran out of the ring. And Dave Waddington, we played patty cake for 30 seconds, and finally he tripped and fell, and I fell on top of him. So there was a guy named Dave Brown in the silver dollar deadlift. He said, Bill, I've worked 5 years to break your record, and I did 1,060, and he's all feeling really good. And we have a lot of guns in America. He said, here's a 22 Derringer. Dave, shoot yourself in this leg, and then shoot yourself in this leg, and do your 1,060, and come back to me and tell me how that worked out for you. You maybe broke the number record, but you didn't break the real record.
Yeah.
So yeah, injuries and specialization.
So talking to you, I mean, there's a lot of similarities. You know, I look at my own career, and now that I've come to the end of it, I look back and I don't regret anything. Sometimes talking to you, I feel like there's some regrets there, but it's because you often bring up the injuries, and you know, you clearly want people to understand what you've been through, because a lot of people don't, especially back then. There was no social media, stuff like that. Now if a guy gets injured, they can post it all online and stuff like that. Everyone knows about it. They know if someone's going into a competition, you know, with something wrong. I look back and I look at where I'm at now, and this is the reason I want to ask this is because I look at you as a complete legend of strongman. You know, I've had a great career myself and stuff, but you were one of the guys that I really looked up to. And talking to you, it sometimes seems there's a lot of regret. Do you kind of look back at your career, especially now that strongman's growing, and you have this role now where you are just like the strongman legend? You get to go to events, people admire what you've done, what you've achieved, but from talking to you, it feels like you should have done more. Do you feel regret, or are you happy and proud of what you've achieved?
Yeah, great question, but spontaneously that's a little tough to answer, but here goes. The regret of not specializing and of going so fast, trying to do so much all the time is one. Surely that slowing down and a longer career might have been much more fruitful. Not being as popular then as now, strongman, that's a regret. Zydrunas Savickas lives in a big house and has 6 gyms. It's like, wow, Novikov is hungry. Why is he hungry? Because the money he makes is like $1 million in his country. So yeah, wrong era. Regret that I didn't get involved in social media, knowing what an athlete can make with endorsements and the things, popularity as number one this day and age is $1 million. I left 10 million, 20 million on the table if I would have been more savvy to social media. So regrets like that, yeah. But as those are simple, come and go and passing. There's nothing you can do. There are kind of like 3 ideas you have: where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. Gosh, where I am on the stage with Neil and Darren and the Dream Team and Colin, doing a film competition, real live, that's in 70 countries, and I'm almost 70 years old, and all the guys before me are either dead or retired, or I'm relevant, my Lord, to actually have a bowing, standing ovation similar to on stage to Mark Felix the other day was like, I pretended I had a little tear in my eye. There might have been a little, but 5,000 people saying, "You're the greatest." Holy catfish. No regrets there. And so where I am is wonderful. Where I've been, we don't have yesterday, so there's nothing we can do about it, but we can learn from it and share it with others. And where am I going? I've had a pretty good run, a pretty good life, and I see the next 10 years as being ones that will be fruitful for myself, but mainly for other people. Where the plan in 2022, coming back to Europe, is to share with as many as we can on a fairly high level of seminars, but then also reaching out to 50 kids at a time and charge them $5 to come to the gym and learn from Kaz and take home a Kaz experience, maybe a poster and a t-shirt, and get on their quest to become who they're going to be. So one big regret, there were 2 TV shows that one of them is lost, cut, not digitalized. It's the American version of My Best Years, 80, 81, 82. Instead, TWI has chosen to show the European version, which puts Jeff Capes and I in this race like we're rivals, and I beat him by almost 30 points. That's a regret. And actually, in one of the European shows, they show me wrestling with Kurt Marsh, or the football player. I had just beat John Gamble. My legs are torn. I beat Dave Waddington. I could hardly walk. And I'm up against a football player that did nothing for the whole competition, and he's good on his feet, and I can't even use mine. I had him by the throat. He threw in the whizzer. I could have swept a leg and just slammed him. Instead, I let him toss me out. Big deal. Well, the European version of that event was, and the last event, the final event of the day, not the final, me against football player. And so that's deception, and I have regrets from that. And I have regrets that when they didn't invite me, I think Jeff Capes had a lot to do with Grizzly Brown being invited instead of myself. There were signs that I saw of photos. The American champion 3 times, 1,100 kilo total, 300 kilo bench. From America, Grizzly Brown.
Yeah.
They gave him my records 3 times as a title. So Barry Frank was right. You can bring any fat guy. Nobody knows the difference. They go, oh yeah, Capes just beat that guy that won 3 times in a row with all those powerlifting records. No, he beat Grizzly Brown, his buddy. And so those are some of the regrets. And it's just that life's not fair,
I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to sit and talk to you and get some of these things out, because I've like all of us, we just watch old shows, read stuff, and you don't know if it's. I know from competing myself, they can portray it any way they want. and someone writing an article can change things that you say. They can show things however they want. So that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and understand your perspective of how things happened, and but I have to say, as a strongman and as a fan of a modern era of strongman, you have been a huge inspiration, not just to me, to absolutely every guy that competes now. You're one of the guys that put strongman on the map. Without yourself, and I'd include like the Jean-Paul Sigmarssons into that list. They laid the foundation for what we can do now. But when you look at all these guys, these greats from the past, you're the one that's still there, involved in the sport now.
I'm pretty lucky, huh, Les? I must have played my cards right. And, we feel like you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way back down. And although I'm on the way back down, I can remember just a couple of years ago when Eddie Hall was lifting in a gym and competing in a car park. And now he's a celebrity and a superstar in the sport. We have to kind of remember that Strongman, since its infancy, was a TV show. More than 125 years ago, it was a spectacle where in the Royal Albert Hall, Sandow competed. Well, he did a display with other strength athletes, but he signed a contract at that time, which I found out about 20, 30 years ago, that Gerner or Sear were not allowed in that Coliseum or that arena indefinitely, in perpetuity. So he protected himself and his reputation and really, didn't allow anybody to get near him. So who knows what his weights really weighed. When you lift a dumbbell like Sear that has a corkscrew on one end and it's adjustable, an adjustable dumbbell can be called anything. It's adjustable.
Yeah.
And so we don't know about a lot of those things that happened way back then. But we know today that things are calibrated, weighed, measured by reputable companies' names, and they're done in competition. So that, when you look at things that somebody claims, it's just that, it's a claim. And looking at eras, 1900, 1980, 2000, 2020, 3 different eras here with the one from 100 years ago. The TV show World's Strongest Man has now evolved, where World's Strongest Man is still what it's always been. But you have Giants Live, which is a show with the absolute strongest guys in 4 to 5 hours, in 5 or 6 events, that the guy that comes away at the end is truly the champion of the world. And there's no question. I gotta mention Novikov, Evan Singleton. I sat next to Novikov on the way to the hotel before the after party at the Arnold. He wasn't going, I wasn't going. There's no reason to rub elbows with everybody after the show. I wanted to go to bed. I think I gave, as Novikov did, he gave his best performance. I gave mine on the stage and just wanted to go to bed. I sat next to him and I bumped him. It was like bumping into a concrete wall. I got back in the van with my pizza. That was the only restaurant open at that time of night. And I'm going to get in, and I don't move like I did years ago. He grabbed my pizza and put it on his lap and held it there until I got out, and then he got out and handed it to me. He's a wonderful gentleman, great guy, but when he's competing, well, one other perception. My pizza was hot. His body was probably, I don't know, if we're 98, he was probably running 150. He was glowing, it was so hot. And when he competes, he's got such focus and intense excitement of the moment. He does a little bit like all great athletes do. He rehearses. He does it physically, mentally, and then you see it and do it.
Yeah.
And Evan is similar. I see him go up to the fever point, compete, and then come back down, laugh, have a good time, and that's what I might regret about my time. I knew I was up, and the odds were stacked against me. I was up against other athletes and their referees, their promoters, their events. pretty tough to beat all three of those, and you know, along with the athlete at the same time in events that are not familiar. So that goes back to the regrets. But today's strongman scene is just so unbelievable, and I'm so happy to be part of it. Every one of the shows I go, this is the greatest day of my life. Well, so is today, being interviewed by you for your channel and being able to reach hundreds of thousands of people and tell my story and some of the insights of the highs and the lows. And the shame is that in retrospect, I recall the problems and recite those in detail so many times that the high points and the really fun stuff of my career are kind of like secondary. It's like I'm still fighting the fight.
Which is a shame.
And making the argument.
You achieved so many incredible things. Even the incredible things that you've done, probably more than almost anyone. You've done some, you know, how many world records did you have? How many world titles did you have? How many other titles did you have? You know,
I like to think of the purity of purpose and going into a community and leaving it better than I found it. Speaking in 10 schools in one day, 15 and 30, 18 and 32, 27 times in 3 days. Actually, looking a child in the eyes, and like the Highlander who took off the head, the quickening, as I look in a child's eyes and I challenge him to shoot for the stars, soar with the eagles and hang out with the condors, stay away from the chickens and turkeys, and be the best you can be every day in every way. Repeat 100 times, I can, I will, I can, I will, I can, I will. Use the 3 words of conceive, believe, and achieve. Dream, pick a goal. Develop a plan to get to the goal. Believe in the plan, believe in the goal. Believe in yourself. Look in the mirror and like who you see. Achievement is relatively simple. Hard work, desire, determination, dedication, consistency. And to be able to go into a community and change it and look through that kid's eyes, go down his throat and put an imprint on his heart and soul, then the quickening happens.
whoa! I feel ready to go and achieve some goals now.
I think, Terry Holland said it best. He said, man, when I hear Kaz talk, I did a seminar in his gym. He said, I want to just run through a wall.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's something you should definitely do more of. Very quickly, and then last thing, with the modern era of strongmen, who are the 5 guys that impress you the most?
Modern era. Does that go as far back as O.D. Wilson?
I'm talking about the guys competing now.
Oh.
We've got such a competitive... I mean, that's a great thing, actually. Go on then, both of those. 5 guys now, and Kaz's top 5 of all time. So who should we be looking out for the battle of World's Strongest Man over the next couple of years?
Well, Luke Richardson, both Stoltmans, Evan, Novikov, forgive me, the excommunicated one, Nove, how do we say his name? The powerlifter?
Oh, Pavlo Nekonechny.
What a hothead. If he only had some focus, could be one of the best ever. Yeah, greatest of all time. Brian Shaw, Big Z, OD. Kiri was 300 kilo bencher and never won. So it just right time, right place, right events.
Yeah.
And that's the luck of the draw. And they talk about the order and there being a draw. That's funny. It's a drawing like a sketch. And picking events, that's, all I can say is that what John Slav is doing and picking events is truly making it a classic. And they keep changing, and there's endurance and static, and carry, and the world's greatest hips came through. Your car carry world record, I think, is going to last for a long time.
Oh, it's already been beaten by the Polish Terminator, Kiliashkovsky, but
yeah.
I enjoyed the time I did have with it. Kaz, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for agreeing to do it. Took a while to get hold of you. You were actually the first person I asked, but I sent it to the wrong damn account because Kaz has 2 Facebook accounts. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you back in England next year announcing plenty more of the Giants Live events.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to reach your viewers.
If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I'm right here in Brobridge.
But you have like an
Kaz
Instagram.
Coffee.
You got Kaz Coffee?
Yeah. And yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Cool.
If somebody writes 10 words, I will see it every day and respond to them. And I think when they had the voting on or picking who's your favorite strongman, I answered every one of them, even if it was just, thanks for the salute and respect.
Excellent. Well, from me, thank you so much.
Thank you, Les.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Talking Strongman with the one and only, the legend, Bill Kazmaier.
Keep up the good work, Les. You're awesome.
Thank you, buddy. While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.